Hello, everyone, and welcome back to It's Bigger Than Biotech. I'm Hriday, Executive Director of True Drug Pharma and a student at the University of Southern California.
And I'm Vishnu, a software engineer and machine learning and neuroscience researcher aspiring to be a neurotech entrepreneur, also here at SC. Allow me to introduce our guest today. Christian Chung graduated from USC summa cum laude with a BS in human biology with honors, along with a double minor in healthcare studies and science and management of biomedical therapeutics in 2023. He followed that with a master's in stem cell biology and regenerative medicine in 2024, during which he was also the Keck commencement speaker. Christian is currently a process development intern in the pharma-tech operations department at Genentech, where he's working on analytical development and biological characterization of molecules and drugs. In addition to this, during his master's program, Christian co-founded Revilico, formerly known as Nexabio Venture Solutions, and served as Chief Scientific Officer, focusing on novel AI/ML approaches to improve drug repurposing efforts. When he's not at work, Christian is busy with many personal projects, developing simulations for CAR T cells, building probability theory models for stem cell differentiation, or exploring knot theory to predict epigenetic modifications. Outside of his scientific endeavors, he enjoys sports and photography.
That is very impressive. Hi, Christian. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak on It's Bigger Than Biotech. We really appreciative, and you're truly impressive. You've accomplished so much already, and you've only just graduated from USC.
So, Christian, we're thrilled to have you here today. Let's dive into your journey and the incredible work you're doing. So, my first question is regarding your role. Could you tell us more about your role specifically at Genentech?
Yeah, not a problem. I think first and foremost, thanks for having me onto this podcast. Yeah, so my name is Christian. Like mentioned, I am currently a process development intern at Genentech. A lot of what I work on is in the field of kind of in the name process development, specifically looking at the development of late stage drugs. In particular, a lot of my focus is on trying to understand the biology of drugs, right? How do we take the drug into market and what information is necessary to be able to ensure that the drug reflects all necessary value and physiological benefits that we intend for it to have when it does reach it into the market. So, it's a lot of mix of experiments, data analysis, but really just trying to support and help these drugs get into the market sometime in the future.
So, could you tell us more specifically what the process looks like? So, your company or your boss or whoever manager gives you a product, right? A drug, and then what do you do first? Do you do data analysis? Do you do research? Do you do sentiment analysis online? What do you do to kind of gauge how the drug is doing and then go forward with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the process is pretty varied, but I think there's a really relatively like standard way to proceed with anything in drug development, whether you're in industry or academia. I mean, a lot of it really just comes down to number one, do you understand the literature of the science? What is the science of what your drug is intending to do? Do you know what you're trying to target and how do you understand what are the potential therapeutic benefits you get out of it? So I think a lot of time it's a lot of literature reviews, and this is not even just for my position. I think anything in the world with industry and academia, you need to understand the literature, the context, and the background information. For me specifically, a lot of it is designing experiments to, again, understand what we're seeing in the literature and things that we're hoping to achieve afterwards. Typically, your data analysis and all that good stuff comes after you run your experiments. So it's just a series of designing multiple types of experiments that fit in the context of your drug and in the context of your disease, and just trying to make sure that all of that stays validated in the process.
Okay. It looks like a very intensive job. So, like, what exactly does a day look like in your role?
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, I get to work. So I get to work relatively early, not because I'm working right at the crack of dawn, but luckily I'm very fortunate that Genentech has like their own gym. So I usually go actually in the gym in the morning just to kind of get the day started. I would say everything from the morning to lunchtime, it's a various mix, but it typically involves running experiments. I can be in lab for a couple hours, a couple meetings with my manager, some other scientists within my department or other departments. Typically, I tend to run my data analysis more towards the afternoon. It's less work and like less brain intensive activity, in my opinion. So when I'm like, closer to the end of the day, a little bit tired, I can kind of run over there and like, do that stuff for the end of it. But for the most part, I think it's a good balance. Like you really can finish everything that you want to within a calendar day or within a week that whatever your timeline is. So I think it's a good balance, mix of everything. The day to day is always different. in terms of the pattern of when you do certain things. So I think I really appreciate that aspect of working in like the field of biology.
Okay. That's really cool. Yeah, you touched upon that good balance between, running experiments, doing data analysis, also trying to hit the gym at work, and then also like talking to your manager and having that talking point as well. Can you tell us more about what the role interests you the most? What's specifically in the role?
Yeah, I think what's kind of fascinating, if we take a step back, actually, I remember when I was in school, like you would learn a lot about like drug development. You'll learn about the process, like maybe from like start to finish. But
Yeah.
when you do like research or you get involved in specific classes or assignments, you're always touching up on like one little aspect of it, right? Like if you take a molecular biology class, you focus on disease manifestation. If you take like chemistry, you don't focus on like pharmaceutical chemistry, you focus on all the chemical reactions and formulas. So you kind of get like very ranged and very I don't know, it's a very interesting approach. Like you understand conceptually what it looks like, but then application wise, you only do a small portion of every single part here and there. The nice part about the role is that even though when people think about like drug development, they focus a lot about like, oh, we need to make a drug and we need to make sure the drug works. I think people forget the other aspects in drug development, such as like what does that mean for patients in the clinic? What does it mean towards clinical development? How do you actually, package your drug in a way that can go out into the system? What about the marketing business aspect. So working at a big company like Genentech, you get a whole picture, you get the opportunity to network with other individuals and kind of see all the moving parts taking place, and that it's not just, the work I do alone is just one small portion of the whole grand scheme of, how do we develop the whole thing. I think it speaks to why the drug development process right now is really time extensive and really cost extensive, but you kind of get a whole picture of everything, which I think is really cool to see how, how many different moving parts you need to make this successful.
Right. That's very interesting because, in terms of the entire process of things you mentioned, you're a very small part. It's almost like big pharma is a lot of gears working together to create something very massive. But also, I wanted to touch up upon how exactly does big pharma recruit for a certain role? Like, what was the recruiting process like for you and applying to Genentech specifically?
Yeah, admittedly, it was kind of funny because when I applied to Genentech, I actually applied, I think it was February of my last semester at USC, and it's just like a job application I saw open on LinkedIn. I've heard of Genentech before as well, so I kind of just applied, and got an interview and got in. And now that sounds a lot easier said than done. I think there's obviously, for every company, every position, every job, there's always different nuances. But realistically, and I feel like this is the grim reality with recruitment in general, it doesn't even matter about our field, but realistically, getting a job is just a mix of applying and a little bit of luck, right? I would say I don't know if there's a singular way to do it, but one
Mm.
thing that I know that helps a lot is being able to establish networks and connections, right? Having people that can refer you, having people that can open doors and opportunities for you, having people that can tell you about specific company or things that they have heard of. You'd be
Right.
surprised how friendly people actually are in this world, right? I think honestly, I'm not saying that I have an actual like statistical proof for this, but like for every 10 people that you talk to, I think at least 7 or 8 would be open to at least having a conversation or helping you out in some way, shape, or form.
Mm.
So I think just being willing to take that chance and open up your network and connections, it'll help. But yeah, I mean, you just have to kind of go through it and not be discouraged by the process. I think that's an important part too.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you in terms of that, in the sense where you need to create a network before you need it, right? Because I know like a lot of people may seem very intimidating, but it is very surprising. I completely agree with you here that more people are really willing to help out because I feel
Exactly.
like it's a give it forward kind of process. If someone helps you out, you help the next person out. I feel like it has been set in motion in our alumni network, and it works really well. I mean, you've also like you've seen both sides of the table in the sense where you've recruited for a position and also where you're recruiting for a position in terms of your own startup. So, what would you look for in a prospective candidate for a certain role?
Yeah, I think back when I was recruiting for my startup, like many, many months ago, one
Mhm.
thing that I started to realize is that the technical skills, of course, you kind of need that, right? I think like, especially at the time, because the startup I co-founded was in AI and machine learning, I need people who understand how to code, how to read code and understand it, and need people that understand biology to an extent as well too, right? So the technical skills are always super important. You don't need to know everything that's listed on there, but you should know a good amount, right? Or you should be able to at least feel confident in your ability to tackle said problems because whether it's industry or startup environment, it is going to be fast paced. So you do have to get on your feet and begin to work.
Mhm.
But a key aspect that I look for in particular, and this is specifically in the context of biology and research, is that I'm not looking for the smartest person in the room. I'm looking for the person who is the most hardworking, has a passion for what it is that we do, and someone who can effectively communicate with others. And the reason I say that is because if you're not hardworking or passionate, you're not going to succeed in biology. Because think about it, biology is involving research, and why we do research is to understand something new, right? So a lot of times the answers to your questions that you may have, sometimes the people that you work with might not even have the answer to it, right? Because that's what we're trying to discover and that's what we're trying to figure out. So if you don't have the conviction to do things like, on your own will, being, super fascinated about the topic, being willing to dive into the unknown, I think it becomes incredibly difficult. So you have to be hardworking, you have to be passionate about it, but also you need to be able to effectively communicate. And this goes from like, being able to properly talk to the people that you work with, right? Answering emails or messages on time, being able to actually communicate the science properly. It's
Mhm.
one thing I think for people to understand science really well. Like you can take any smart person and they'll know the science,
Mhm.
but a true smart person in science or someone who really understands what they're doing can explain it to anyone, whether you're a person who knows nothing or you're like an advanced like PhD scientist. So
Right.
I think those are like three key qualities that I do looking for. So again, hard work, passion, and communication. And I think those are like interpersonal skills that just kind of help with any industry as well too.
Yeah, very well said, very well summarized as well. Hard work, passion, and communication, the three main criteria. How would you recommend that students kind of build this skill set or this ethic in themselves? Like, what advice would you give them for working in big pharma or anywhere they want to work?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to ethics, the funny thing is like these are habits that you have to build, right? So there's nothing in particular you need to do. It's not like you have to sit down, like you can't ask a person to sit down and tell them to be passionate for 3 hours. Like that means nothing, right? I think what you kind of have to do is like, for example, with hard work, that skill sets that you get from like, are you a good student? Do you study? Do you work hard? Do you, give your 100% at any job or any task that you have at hand? Doesn't even need to be a full-time job. It could even be like just having some fun activity with your friends. Are you hardworking in that aspect? Are you passionate about what you do? That's not something you can teach. You can't teach passion. Passion is something that I think people have to be willing to do. You have to really know what it is that you enjoy, right? Trialing and error. You might not like the first thing that you're doing right now, even maybe in your major, but if you try something a little bit different, maybe you do enjoy it and that ends up becoming your passion,
Mhm.
right? So just seeking out the opportunity. And communication, like what's kind of funny is that, you can practice presenting. For me, in all honesty, I'm not the type of guy to practice a presentation because I actually do worse because I overthink how I'm going to say stuff. Realistically, communication is, there are aspects that you can practice, like how to better say or phrase something. But I think just the daily act of like even talking to your friends, if you think about it, people get so stressed out in interviews because they think it's like a super formal environment. But if you think about how you answer questions so fast, like informally with your friends or people that you normally talk to on a day-to-day
Mhm.
basis,
Right.
communication is actually not that hard. It's just a matter of like not overthinking things and having the mentality. That takes some time and effort, obviously, to get better at, but I
Right.
don't think it's anything in particular. So just building these habits and recognizing where you can improve it on your day-to-day life,
Mhm.
actually kind of helps build a habits. You don't need to do heavy biology work to be considered a passionate person. You just have to do something you enjoy. So I don't think there's any special things with it. It's literally just recognizing how do you live your day-to-day life.
Right. No, very well said. I mean, if I were a student, I mean, I am a student right now. I would most likely take an improv class because I feel like that
Mhm.
would help a lot with communication. It's
Yeah,
just get up on stage, talk about whatever, and just be fluent and natural with it. I feel
right.
like yeah, you unlocked a very key insight into communication. It's not about always practicing things, it's about letting things go and letting it go smooth and letting it flow freely. But let's say now a student has mastered these things and is kind of feeling ready to go into the workforce, but they don't know like what the industry is like right now. So what would you say are the pros and cons of the recruitment process in the overall healthcare industry right now?
Yeah, I mean, the pros in healthcare is that I think there's a lot of flexibility in terms of like where you want to work with. There's just so many things in healthcare for you to be able to do, and healthcare is not a field that's going to die down, right? As
Right.
long as human life exists on Earth, healthcare is always going to be a topic. It's just a matter of how that will shape up. But I think it's not a worry about like what opportunities you have out there.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different environments you can work with, right? You can work in a big company, small company, startup environment, fast paced, or like one that's more like monotonous, maybe. And there's even like a good amount of locations, right? Because again, it's healthcare. It's going to exist everywhere, whether you're in pharma, whether you're in actual medicine. That's something that's going to exist anywhere that you want. So you'll probably find an opportunity in almost any state or city that you want. Some will be better than others, but for the most part, there are options, right? The
Right.
biggest con, though, and maybe it's about, in the current timeline of when we're having this conversation, is that the market is a little tricky, right?
Yeah.
It's funny that I say that there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of opportunities given that the market is kind of like all over the place and it's kind of
Mhm.
hard to get a job sometimes. But I will say, things will get better at some point. And I'm not saying this as like, oh, I'm an economist who can predict the future. I truthfully believe that everything does kind of get itself into the right place and you'll find something, right? I would say it's almost impossible you don't find anything unless you just didn't put in the effort to bother, right? As long as you put in the work to do it, I think people can find something. Maybe
Mhm.
it might not be your first choice right from the bat, but everything does correct itself. And as long as you're doing the right work, you're going to get to where you want to be.
Definitely. Completely agree with you.
Yeah, you gave us lots of really good insights, I guess, into the recruitment process, both for big pharma, startups, or in general for communication with people to be successful in life, right? And I also know that you just graduated from university, so I'd like to ask more questions about your university days. So you worked on projects like the investigation of energy drinks and caffeine consumption during your undergrad and grad school. Could you explain more on how it helped you and your thoughts on the importance of research experience for healthcare industry roles and whether it's worth doing?
Yeah. So funny enough, so I guess to take a step back, when I was at USC, I started off doing like biology research, right? I was in a stem cell and synthetic biology lab at the medical school, and that was primarily what I wanted to do in the future, something biology related. I think it was because of COVID that I started to realize that I had other passions or things I wanted answers to, right? So, for example, actually, funny enough, in COVID, I actually also did like a mental health study where I was looking into mental health of students during COVID because, that's, I mean, it seems kind of weird to say like, oh, it's kind of cool because no one knows about it. So let me do some like mini experiments on like, surveys and see how kids are
Mhm.
doing, which, as we can kind of tell, the conclusion was not great, right?
Yeah.
But I thought it would be kind of cool to see how can we understand mental health during a big pandemic crisis, because that's something I was going through with everyone else. But I was also fascinated in energy drinks, mainly because I remember just walking in Target once and just seeing the countless amount of energy drinks at the
Mhm.
campus Target. And I was like, well, I drink caffeine on a daily basis, right? I drink coffee all the time. Like, I wonder how do people understand energy drinks, especially since the way it's marketed is very similar to the way the vaping industry does all these kind of like cool flavors for like it almost seems like they are targeting kids. Again, this kind of brings me to the idea of like passion. I didn't do this because anyone told me to study energy drinks. I did it because I was passionate about it. And I think I got a little lucky because my minor in biomedical therapeutics, I actually took a class that was a lot on drug substances and abuse, caffeine being one of our weekly topics for that lesson. And I actually conducted research with that professor that I had the class with because I really wanted to work with him on this idea that I had of studying, the marketing regulations and how do we perceive energy drinks and caffeine.
Mhm.
So how it kind of helped me is that, again, here's the cool thing about research is that research, regardless of what field it is, it's pretty universal. You need to understand an introduction and the context for the topic you're talking about. You need to come up with a specific hypothesis. You need to develop a methodology. You execute said experiment. You get
Mhm.
discussions. You portray your discussions and showcase your results and what you concluded out of it. And if you think about it, every single field that involves research essentially follows the same type of like scientific procedure, right?
Mhm.
Hypothesis, method, execution, results, discussion, conclusion. The only difference between every research field is that maybe if you do a biology research, you need to know some technical skills. Maybe you need to know how to cell culture. Maybe you need to know how to do a PCR. In the context of an energy drink, I need to know how to read literature really well. I needed to know how do I create and curate a survey that I can get approved to distribute to individuals. How do I conduct data analysis once I get the survey results? And when I learned from the process is that doing research, you gain more skills than you lose anything, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's the technical skills of like data analysis to running a PCR, to even like the thought process of like how do you identify a problem and how do you work to solve the problem, right?
Right.
And I think that's incredibly useful. I would argue the same thing happens in your day-to-day life as well, too, right? Let's say you have a sink that's broken in your house and you're trying to figure out, oh, why doesn't the sink work, right? You'll say like, maybe number one, I'm turning the faucet the wrong way. I don't know, right? Like something example like that. And so you turn it the other way and you find out it works. There you go, solution solved. But then you're identifying potential areas of where the problem could exist, right? And that's the thing about research. Research really gets you into the mindset of like, how do you solve problems? How do you answer it? And what are you going to do to execute it? And is it worth doing? I incredibly think it is worth doing, especially if you are in science, whether you're planning to go to medical school, biotech, whether you're trying to just, who knows, maybe if you're going into consulting in the future for some reason. I think research is incredibly helpful to have because you can, I think when I look back on it, there are so many skill sets that I gained out of it that I feel like I wouldn't have gained if I didn't do it.
I think what you touched upon, having that scientific mindset everywhere, in the sense that, when you walk in Target, you see the energy drinks and you think of doing research on them, right? I think having that scientific mindset is really important, especially if you want to go into biopharma, biotech, medical school, whatever. And I think there's more to it. Can you try and tie that back to what work you do right now and how that scientific mindset, you would say, helps you either in Genentech or your startup?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking back at it, it was, I mean, the technical skill sets were all there, right? Data analysis of understanding how to read my data, how to visualize it properly, what graphs is the best choice to portray my data to not only myself, but even other people in the company. Those are the technical skills that are always there. But I think, again, because I have the ability of problem solving, it makes it so much easier to approach problems, or at least I know what to do, right? Like, even if I don't know the answer to a question, that's fine because that's the reality of research. But now I know what to do for it. For example, let's say I get a specific drug molecule and I'm being tasked with the idea of like, how does the drug impact this system? Well, I'm not going to know the answer straight up, but immediately my thought process is that, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is go to the literature. Let's see what literature says about what's going on. And then I'll say, oh, I identified that this quote unquote gene A, maybe, right, for example, tends to get upregulated in the system. So I'm going to propose that if I force the regulation of gene A, I will get some expected result. And if I use my drug, I can stop that said result, right? So again, it's that thought process. You instantly think about like, what do I need to even like understand this problem? And then what can I propose as potential solutions? I think hypothesizing things in research and in life is great because you're always trying to ask yourself, what could be your potential answers, right? That's what a hypothesis is, right? You're making a statement of what you think the end result could be, and then you're trying to prove that end result, right? And I think being able to do that aspect is super critical and super key. Even back when I was doing the startup stuff, there were a lot of things I couldn't figure out how to do. Maybe at the time I was like, oh, how do I actually classify the disease? What AI model works the best? But again, you propose solutions. I would say like, oh, let's look at model one, model two, model three, and let's test those out and see which one works best. I could hypothesize that I think model two will work great. And if it does work, and I go from there. And it's constantly thinking about your approach to problem solving. One other aspect I think that was super important was seeing things for the whole picture, right? If you think about it, your answer to your specific problem needs to be able to fit the grand scheme of everything that you're doing. Like you always have to ask yourself, why am I doing what I am doing? Right? Because if you can't answer that question, then what's the point of doing what you're doing, right? There's no purpose to it. So I think going back, taking a step back, it's kind of helpful to recognize like, oh, okay, I need to really make sure that this is intending to be what I want it to be. But I think it also gives you like a reminder that like you're doing important work too, right? It's like if you remind yourself that, hey, I'm helping develop this drug because I want this to get to patients, then yeah, it kind of helps bring you back into that like kind of a sense of grounding yourself.
Okay, yeah, that makes lots of sense. We understand that you took lots of opportunities in research at USC, and you took that forward as well with your work. We'd also like to know what other resources you took advantage of while at university for your career goals.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say there was any like other resources per se. Like I mean, people will tell you like, oh, by the way, like the school has this service that you could use or this that you could use. And I feel
Yeah.
like those were always nice to have, but nothing in particular that stands out to me as like, oh, this is the greatest thing in my life during university.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, and it's not even university specific, it's just life specific, right? It's like just being able to network and have people that you can network with, right? The action of just talking to someone and asking them for advice, assistance, or like just to pick at their brain to know more about them, that is a huge thing to have in and of itself. And I wish people, like to an extent, I wish people had would have told me that earlier. It was something I took advantage of, but when I graduated from school and now I'm working full time, I actually found in myself that I was networking more post grad than I was during school. And I kind of wish I was consistent, like just like networking a lot during college. The thing is that college is great because you're going to learn subjects in your classes towards your specific major. You're going to have great experiences. But it's kind of funny because some of my greatest memories or some of the greatest pieces of knowledge I've taken from college came from conversations with people and not from lectures, right? And I wish I had talked to a lot more people about anything from the biotech industry, maybe research, academia, their career trajectory, and even their perspectives on life. I love hearing people's perspectives on life because I think it kind of brings value into why we do what we do, and why people have different passions and why they pursued one field over another. So just having conversations, right? It's again, humans aren't necessarily quote unquote a resource. I don't want to like objectify anyone, but I think humans are the greatest thing that can happen to all of us, and just being able to have that interaction is pretty nice.
Right. I actually want to ask for deeper insight. You've said networking helps a lot. Right, but there's so many different avenues in university where you can network. There's dinners, there's clubs, there's reaching out to alumni. What specifically did you use? Did you join any clubs? You can shout them out if you want. Or did you specifically just focus on alumni networking, or did you go to any dinners or events happening?
It's a mix of everything. I mean, I would even argue the act of talking to your friends and meeting new people is, I mean, I don't want to say it's like networking. I think networking is a little bit over formal, but it's just having conversations, right? Having conversations to an extent. That's what networking is about. You have conversations, you talk to people. So I think like, yeah, funny enough, I went to it was like my first ever, not even a party, it was just like a kickback at college. I was just talking to people and just getting to know more about them. And I made some friends from there, for example, right? Like that you could argue is networking to an extent. I was in several clubs at USC. I was in like the medical ethics club. I was doing human biology association, had great times at those clubs and got to know a lot of people. And even through guest speakers that came to speak at them, I loved being able to hear their insights and continue those conversations afterwards. I think in class, you have classmates, right? Probably more often than not, you're talking about school and how you guys maybe hate yourselves because you have a midterm coming up or something of the sorts, right? But those relationships I think were also important. The professors are great to talk to during office hours. You don't even need to just talk to them about school stuff. Sometimes they are willing to talk about, maybe career advice or other information. I think being able to also ask them if they know of anyone that they could talk to as well too. It's kind of like creating like almost like a domino effect. You ask one person who can refer you to another person who can refer you to another person. That's is just a beautiful thing to bounce back on. It's something that I actually use a lot. But I think the last way that I feel like it's not something that I did in college, I wish I did more of it, is just reaching out to people on LinkedIn, right? Talking to people on LinkedIn, sending emails, especially if there's some connection. Like you see, hey, here's a guy who graduated from my university. Let me just reach out and see if they respond. Most of the time, people will do that. And I've actually even gotten emails and messages on LinkedIn myself where people are like, hey, I just love to chat for a few minutes. And like I said, people are receptive to conversations and chatting. So take advantage of that. The worst they're gonna say is no, right? No one's gonna sue you because you messaged them on LinkedIn out of nowhere, right? So I think that's a
Yeah.
nice thing to consider, right? Like no one's gonna like you're not gonna arrest it for messaging someone unless you actually say something stupid. So it's like just reach out. There's no harm. There's no risk. If they say no, that's totally fine. There's so many people out there in this world. You get one no, who's gonna care, right? Like it doesn't. There's like 20 other people that'll tell you yes.
Definitely.
Okay, yeah, so you touched upon things that you did do at university. I'd like to know what would you have done differently at university?
So I will say I actually had a lot of fun in college, but I wish I wasn't so maybe gung-ho and intense on work. I think I did work a lot in lab. I did study a lot in school, but I wish I just had a lot more free time to just chill, vibe with people, or even like rot in bed, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think college is such an interesting concept because you spend 4 years at a university, more or less, with people, with classes. It's a very interesting, unique environment, right? Because it's not like maybe like high school where you're just constantly in school and you have stuff to do, right? And it's not like the adult world after graduating where like you're constantly working, you have responsibilities. It's kind of a mix of both, right? It's like a transition period where you get to really learn about a lot about yourself, the people around you, and just have fun. And I think I wish I just had more fun in college. Because, for example, I'll give you what I used to do. In college, I kind of created this routine where I would do study and work from like Monday to Thursday. I wouldn't go out. And then Friday afternoon, evening times, I would tell myself, okay, I'm not doing any work. This day I'm just gonna chill and vibe, which ended up just me being like playing video games with my friends until like 3 in the morning. Saturday was also kind of like just another chill day, relax, take it easy. Sunday, get back to work and rinse the cycle over again. And look, I mean, it worked out for me. I would say I'm like doing pretty okay now, right? So that process probably worked in some way, shape, or form. But I wish I wasn't so strict on things. Like let's say Monday through Thursday, a friend wanted to hang out and just grab dinner for even like an hour, right? I think I could have afforded an hour to go get dinner with my friend and then come back and do work. That shouldn't have been a problem. Or let's say one of my roommates said, "Oh, hey, do you want to just grab boba for a couple minutes?" I think I could have had time to go out, get boba, come back and do some work, right? And I wish I had done a lot more of that. Like that's what I mean by having more fun, like being a little bit more spontaneous, right? I don't think the action of me going out and getting dinner with a friend or getting boba with like a friend is reckless. I think it's something that could have been okay, right? It's a reasonable thing to ask for. Now, obviously, that's different from, college students saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna get wasted on a Wednesday night." That's like a terrible idea, right? Like, I'm not saying do things like that, and if you have, that's not a problem. I mean, life lessons, right? But I wish I was a little bit more spontaneous, had those moments, just kind of like just enjoyed it, just didn't take it. I think I took it pretty seriously. I did have fun, but I think I could have like just enjoyed it a little bit more.
Definitely. Very well said, honestly, and super insightful. Because it is very true that some people like really expect a lot of themselves during university. They want to go all out, like they need to become an academic weapon is what they need to be, right? And I feel like university is a time to really figure out who you are and what kind of person you want to be, and that flexibility is a part of it. And you say that really well. And that's why I love asking questions like that, because making people kind of retrospect and see what they've done different gives you insights that you could apply to your own life. And
Exactly.
the fact that you mentioned flexibility, like, I would also want to apply that to my time here and now, because I have a year or two left. And yeah, I feel like this would kind of help me out a lot. But now, more so looking towards your university days and kind of transitioning towards the future of the industry and of itself. What do you think is the future of your current role at Genentech? And what do you think is going to be the next big breakthrough in the healthcare, biotech, pharmaceutical industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the future, like how like my career kind of stays in the coming years, like I said, healthcare is always going to exist regardless. As long as human beings are alive, we are going to have that industry. So I think it'll always here, right? Pharma, medicine, these are not fields that can easily die off. I can't imagine it being in a way where people aren't involved. So I'm not worried about, again, like the job availability, the fact that it becomes something that's an option. What I think is kind of interesting, kind of relates to the breakthroughs, is how do we make things a lot more efficient, right? Like when we think about life, when we think about pharma, medicine, the goal is always how do we make things a lot more efficient, right? And of course, AI and machine learning has definitely been the talk of the town, right? With drug discovery, with things of the process. I think also thinking about the way we automate tools, right? For example, imagine instead of running a PCR by hand by yourself, you have a machine that can do a PCR for you, right? We already have like these machines, like Hamilton has these like Hamilton operators where you can just like run pipetting things on their own. People have like cell counters so that they don't have to run their own cell counting things by hand or like counting how many cells exist in a microscope, right? So a lot of these automation tools I feel like are going to come through a little bit more than they already have right now. And I think in addition to AI and machine learning, automation, my next biggest breakthrough probably actually relates a lot to my master's degree. So maybe I'm a little biased, but I really do think stem cell technologies are going to be a big aspect of the future. I love stem cell biology. It was actually the reason why I wanted to study biology in the first place. I think the idea that a cell can turn into multiple different types of cells and how do you understand the fate decisions of that is really cool. People right now claim they have stem cell therapeutics. Most of it is probably just marketing scams and they're scamming people by like injecting something different. But I do believe in the future, with blood transfusions, tissue regeneration, stem cells will be such a great part. But one thing I also think about, not necessarily maybe a breakthrough, but something we'll also consider a lot more moving forward in the future is how do we improve healthcare equity and around different communities, different groups. How do we improve that in society? And I feel like as we progress as a society, these are questions we have to continue to answer. And drug discovery and therapeutics, pharma, medicine have been already trying to tackle this question, but I wouldn't be surprised if we still continue this push for innovating that idea or how do we really progress that forward.
Yeah, definitely. You touched upon very relevant points, specifically with stem cells. Gene therapy is now becoming very popular as a one-shot cure for diseases like sickle cell anemia, for example, where there's a gene therapy called Casgevy. However, the equity part was so spot on because this therapy costs 2.2 million per patient. I mean, these are definitely questions we need to answer as the industry moves forward into stem cells where we have one-time cures. How do we value them? How do we pay for them? So it's a very interesting period in the industry right now where we're still figuring these things out. And it's absolutely great. Also, going back to almost like recruitment-ish question I had for you is who would thrive in a startup space or versus who would thrive in big pharma? Could you kind of break it down for us and clarify it?
Yeah, I think these are, I think, general kind of like stereotypes of both in groups. I mean, like, look, you have to be a good person with technical skill sets. The same thing like communication, being able to express your ideas, work well with people. The standard, I guess, like personality traits or work habit traits that you need to be successful anywhere in the world, that stays the same, right? The difference becomes a little bit more towards your personality and your kind of like how well you work with specific environments. And I think the startup environment in particular is good for people who really enjoy fast-paced environment, right? It's super fast-paced. Startups are trying to get themselves to be a bigger name or maybe get bought out by someone, right? But startups are going to be really fast. So you have to be willing to be constantly working. You may work overtime a little bit more than a standard like 9 to 5, 40-hour week, right? You may need to work weekends here and there. So startups do have that fast-paced kind of mindset. And in addition to being fast-paced, because you have to go really quick and figure something out, there's a lot of uncertainty and changes. So you have to be flexible, you have to be adaptable, you have to be willing to change. And that if your project gets like wiped out and reconfigured into something else, you have to be ready to jump on that and go into it, right? But I think a startup is also good for people who can be really independent. Working with others is important, but if you have really great independent skills, that is huge because sometimes, again, you are trying to figure out answers that not a lot of people know about, so that's going to be on you. But another thing I think with the startups is because by nature of it, it's a smaller population of people too, right? So if you want to know what the direct impact of your work is, you can clearly see like a one-to-one almost of like we launched this product and I was specifically in charge of this arm of that project and that product, right? So that's I think a cool thing about startups. Big pharma, it's a little bit interesting, right? Because big pharma, it's a giant company. You have like thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people located in an area. And I think big pharma is good for people who want stability, right? People who just want, a casual, again, like a more of a 9 to 5 life, 40-hour work week. Yeah, sure, some days may be more than others, but it's not something you have to do every week. You just enjoy being able to do good work. You just want to be able to, it's like people who just like want to be comfortable in life, right? Like work is not a lot about their life right now, so they just want to kind of settle down, kind of go into that environment. What I think also is nice about big pharma is that you have so many resources, right? Like if you want these automated tools, if you want these cool software technologies, you can get that easily. Startups, because you might not have every tool in the world because of funding or like the nature of the size, you typically have to find new innovative approaches for things. But if you, again, want to be comfortable and just be able to get the good work done, big pharma is great as well too. I think if I could give advice for people who are just starting out in their careers as well too, I don't think it matters whether you start in a startup first or big pharma first. But one thing that I know people who are still trying to learn and investigate things is that you will find great ways to thrive in both a startup and big pharma. For example, if you're young in your career and you start in a startup, well, look, you're young, you probably don't have a family yet, you probably don't have a lot of responsibilities besides yourself and taking care of like rent and something of the sorts. So if you want to invest a little bit more time to really get the work ethic down, learn new things within a startup, that's great. If you're early in your career and you go into a big company, that's also great because you have so many resources available to you. It's just a matter of spending the time to network and learn all those specific things. But I would say probably, at least in my life, I don't think I could work in a heavy startup environment later in the future. Like, if I have a family or I have other things I want to do besides work, I think a startup maybe wouldn't be necessarily for me because there's other things in life that I do value. And I think that's a big question that everyone has to consider as well too. But if you're really engaged in the work and that's something you don't mind, would work out great, right? I think big pharma for me would work out in a perfect sense in the future because it's like it's pretty consistent, it's pretty stable. You get to still do pretty cool stuff, so no complaints either way.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think you touched upon lots of points that people confide to, right? I see myself also working in startups in the beginning of my career because that's when I'm energetic, that's when I'm young, that's when I don't really have much responsibilities, right? And the stability point of big pharma, and this relates to every career in terms of big tech and everything. Like bigger companies give you more stability, and sometimes people like that, and sometimes people like uncomfortable situations where you reiterate on an idea again and again and again, like a startup. So that's really cool stuff. I'd like to jump onto the last section of our podcast, which is a rapid fire round. where you're going to answer questions in between one word and one sentence, but you can also talk more about a specific thing if you do want to. So the first question is, what topic in the healthcare industry do you love the most?
Healthcare, I think I love healthcare education and outreach. Just being able to like, how do we, get that out there? How do we get people better informed?
Okay. And what do you love about your role?
With my roles right now, I think it's just having really cool biology work, but the fact that my work does have a direct application to patients.
Okay. What do you dislike about your role?
I would say nothing in particular. I think it's just knowing that you can't just randomly explore things on your own. You do have to work in the confines of like what it is you're tasked to do, but not my biggest worry either, too, personally, for my own life.
Okay. And is there an interesting networking story that taught you a lot?
Yeah, it was actually during my time at Genentech. So I was talking to a senior scientist and we were kind of talking about career advice. And we came to this conversation about like how his dream career was to be like a comedian in the future. And even though he ended up being a scientist, he learned that a career isn't defined by a specific position, but rather the goals you want to achieve. And he asked himself, the reason why I wanted to be a comedian is because I wanted to make people laugh and I wanted people to have fun. And that's something that he carries on into his own work as a scientist, where he tries to really engage people, make people laugh during meetings, enjoy the time period, and that it's like you can still get aspects of a quote unquote dream career, but focus more on like the person you want to be and what you want to do rather than like being so hard stuck on a specific position.
That is actually really cool. What is your favorite source of healthcare industry related information?
I think just PubMed. I read like a lot of scientific papers both for work and just out of interest. So I think that's the best way I can keep up to date.
Okay. And last question, what is the wise quote that has stuck with you over the years?
Yeah, it was actually from one of my brothers during COVID, and we were having I don't know what the conversation was. We were talking about something random, but he gave me this quote about how in life there are no such things as regrets, just life lessons to learn from.
Yeah, perfect. And that wraps up our episode with Christian on It's Bigger Than Biotech. Christian, thank you so much for sharing your insights, experiences, and all the exciting projects you're working on. Your journey from graduating with honors to pioneering drug repurposing techniques is real inspiration to anyone entering the biotech world. And for our listeners, we hope you found Christian's story as fascinating as we did, from his innovation work at Genentech to his passion projects in cell modeling and stem cell research. There's so much we can take away about the power of curiosity, dedication, and endless possibilities in biotech.
And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends or anyone interested in biotech and healthcare innovation. Stay tuned for more incredible guests in future episodes, bringing you more from the world of science, tech, and beyond. Until next time, this is Vishnu and Hriday signing off. Keep exploring, keep innovating, and remember, it's always bigger than biotech.